Sallie, good, and we're ready, so let's roll.
Okay. Is this mic at an appropriate length? Hi, you can all hear me? Okay. So, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to my talk. This is the third time out of 4 presentations at WordCamp Sacramento that I am in the last slot. And, unfortunately, a lot of people have to go home before this. I do have to say, I'm pretty sure that if I was Chris Lemma, everybody would schedule their flights to leave later and come to the talk. But I'm not Chris Lemma. However, I am really excited to be giving you a presentation about building a portfolio with Gutenberg. So I want to check, out of the people here, who is primarily a designer? Who is primarily a developer? Who is primarily a content creator? Right? Who have I missed?
All of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said primarily, because a lot of us do several different things in working with WordPress, whether it's for ourselves or for clients. Building a portfolio is something that you may do for yourself or for your client. My timer is not ticking down. Very exciting, I can talk forever. So wave at me when I start to be running out of time. So a portfolio is something that can be useful for both you and your clients. So the slide says, what's a portfolio when it's at home? So we want to make sure we know what we're talking about here. Back in 1985, when I was graduating from high school and I had done a lot of fine art, won a few little prizes for artworks and things. A portfolio was a big case that you put your artwork in so that you could take it with you and, show people what you've done and hopefully, get hired for whatever or, win the prize of such and such. It's 2018. And the thing that it's important to remember, because people have been building online portfolios pretty much as long as people have been building websites, even though the tools were quite crude back in the day. But, what is a portfolio? And you see a lot of times, like tools for portfolios, and they're basically meant to arrange pictures in a gorgeous way. If you're a photographer or an artist, that's not a bad thing. I mean, we like looking at pretty pictures. We like to have good visual displays. But we have to come back to, what is your portfolio for? And so this is a nice quote from one of the sources that I consulted while researching this about, ideal portfolios and what should be in your portfolio and all of that kind of thing. The real purpose of a professional portfolio is to provide tangible proof of your value in the workplace. Now, it may not be tangible if it's a non-physical portfolio. People are not necessarily going to, be touching your portfolio online, but the idea is to demonstrate why people would want to hire you, or if it's an internal thing, why they might want to, why they might want to promote you. Why they might want to work with you. And just having, screenshots of the site you built is not really enough, because it doesn't provide the kind of information that the kind of clients I have now identified as being, at least for now, my ideal sort of a client are looking for. Because as I think some of the rest of you have probably experienced, you start out and you're building websites for anybody who wants a website and is willing to pay you money. And then eventually you have to stop and say, okay, I've had a bunch of different experiences building websites for people, and some of them I do not want to repeat, and some of them I definitely want more of. It's like, yeah, hey, I need more clients like the company that paid me hourly for 12-hour days and allowed me to buy a new car. And so, well, what is that client like? What are the clients like? So, who am I trying to talk to? And that is a really important thing to keep in mind. And, if you're curious, it seems like my best clients are basically, marketing director, VP of marketing at a company of, varying sizes, not huge corporations. And they need a site that's going to help them help them with their marketing strategy that they have already defined and know how to measure. Clients who already know what kind of results they want and what constitutes success are really a lot easier to work for. So, coming back to who am I to talk to about portfolios, and why did I decide to talk about portfolios when the call for speakers came out? Well, I'm a developer consultant, and I have a portfolio. I last redesigned my portfolio in 2015. My own website had been so neglected that it wasn't responsive yet, and so I finally managed to rebuild my website, in time for Mobilegeddon, and make it responsive. And at that time, I redid my portfolio. And so I've got this very pretty, portfolio archive page where you can, click on the button and it will show you just the results that come out. That's all right, but in a lot of ways, this portfolio was an epic fail. I did not have time to find a nice, epic fail animated GIF for you. But, so what was wrong with it? Well, I showed a lot of the wrong things, right? My prospective clients, for the most part, do not want to see my code, right? My code belongs in the tutorials that I write for my colleagues. There was visual clutter because figuring out how to display all these different pages was complex. And so like, okay, well, I'm looking at a whole bunch of different things, but right now, I can't actually see any of them. And then, you run into maybe issues with, well, how well is your lightbox working when you click on those to expand them? And what is the context of each of these things? And why is what I built important? Was it important to the client? And then finally, it was really over-engineered. I added all of these, ACF repeater fields so that I could list all the plugins that I'd used and so on. And, that's useful information for me going back to it possibly. It's not really useful information for the client. Fortunately, some of my clients are really smart people. And I did a site for a woman who does internal communications measurement. The content of that blue box is her entire case study for this project. And it actually covers pretty much all the critical elements. And since I know you can't read it from there, a relatively new, smaller company in an industry was growing fast and expected to more than double its size in the next 3 years because of new products in its pipeline. It wanted to compare itself with industry competitors that had already passed through this stage successfully. They wanted to see how they should staff each of their communication functions and how they should relate to one another to be ready to meet its upcoming challenges. The result, after the presentation to the new president, was a completely restructured department led for the first time by a vice president who was part of the senior leadership team. Staffing and budgets have also increased. So this is what she's saying, is that they hired me to come in and consult to find out what the other people who had successfully done this had done and compare it to what we're doing and say, our best chance of being successful here is if we make a change and do this. And so if you want to see the website, I have the URL there. So case studies are the best way to show your work. Outline the challenges of the product and then tell the story of how you arrived at the solution. And I have a little link at the end of that slide to the source on it, you know, which of the various articles about building a portfolio. Okay, this came from an article for designers. That as a designer, you want to explain, you know, really what was behind what you did. Because otherwise, you might as well just have one of those, you know, things up on Dribbble of, oh, I've got a concept for a website. Isn't this pretty? And, you know, the point is not to be pretty. The point is to achieve your client's business goals, to help them, you know, make more money or reach more people with their nonprofit project or any, you know, they have a mission and a vision and a purpose, and your job is to help them accomplish it. It's great if it looks pretty at the same time, but we should all remember the success of Craigslist. So what should go into a case study? And this template that we've got here comes from HubSpot. I collected a few others, but you know, basically, I think everything that they talk about is good except for the unbelievably cheesy stock photo that they used. Do not put cheesy stock photos of people who look obviously like, hi, I'm a model. And you know, if you can't get a screenshot or photo from something you've done or pictures of your client, or, you know, use a nice abstract graphic or something that kind of sets the tone, conveys something about what you did. Because these, you know, unrealistic people in office situations are just going to drive folks away. So beyond that, you know, you want a headline, a title for your case study. Since it's online, it's useful if that includes, you know, some keywords that you're related to your project, and you know, if it's attention-getting in terms of talking about, you know, what is the value they got out of it. You want your client's logo and profile, so information about who you did this for, and therefore what other, you know, another company that's similar to them could have a need for that. Executive summary. Your clients are in a hurry. They do not have to have time to read the enormous posts that I've been, you know, have been putting in my profile, which I then never updated because it was so much work to make something that elaborate. You know, they want to know in a few sentences, is this something I should keep reading? Is this valuable to me? So you have to kind of come up with, here's the TLDR on this project. It's good to have a client quote, you know, a bit of a testimonial in there. If you have a collection of testimonials as a post type already, you're going to want to probably pull that in there and show it rather than enter it twice. But you know, in any case, you should have something where your client is talking about, you know, why they hired you, what it was like before, what it was like afterwards, why they would recommend you to anybody who asked. You should describe the challenges. These are not so much the challenges to you in implementing it, although you can mention those, but the challenges for the client. What was the pain point that brought them to looking for a consultant? They usually have to be in pain before they're not like, you know, very few clients say, hey, we should just completely revamp our website this year. Wouldn't that be fun? No, this does not happen. You know, kicking and screaming is usually how clients go into redoing things, unless they are so fed up with the way it is now that they have to change it. Continuing the template, talk about how you helped. Here's where you can describe a little of your process, not tons and tons of it, and preferably not too technically unless you're really aiming at, you know, working as a subcontractor for marketing firms or something like that, where your client is another technical person. Otherwise, try to keep it, try to explain it in terms that your client is going to understand. The results and the ROI with maybe some graphic illustrations of how things improved, and a call to action. If you need help with your X, get in touch. So how do we translate that into a template for a web page? Well, you get something like this. Yes, I actually own a wireframe tool for PowerPoint. It's called Power Mockup. It actually is surprisingly easy to use, but you may know clients who basically are able to use two software programs, PowerPoint and Excel, and they use them for everything, whether it's appropriate or not. And so, for those clients, this can be a handy tool to create a wireframe. So pretend we have an entire page's worth of wireframe with everything in it. And so, all right, now we know what we want in there, what we want it to look like. How do we build this? Well, before Gutenberg, we had advanced custom fields. Was anybody at that presentation? Right? And does anybody use advanced custom fields? Yes, I've used it a lot for creating templates for clients to make it clear what goes where. And then, so you build the custom fields. That's really easy with the UI. And then you have to actually code the template to retrieve the information. Pods is a framework for doing custom post types, custom taxonomies, meta relationships, and they let you kind of build templates with short codes, and that's easier for some people. You build a layout out of widgets. I build mostly on the Genesis theme framework. They have these widget-based home pages that, when they were invented, were a really cool way around the restrictions of WordPress to make it fairly easy to change out different elements and to pull in dynamic data. And that has just so jumped the shark in terms of usability. Your client goes to the home page and there's like nothing there, and they're like, wait, how do I change the X? Oh, you have to go to the widgets. I have to do what? And more recently, page builders, things like Beaver Builder and Elementor, and somebody invents a new one every week that give you a more visual tool for laying out content. And all of those things work to some degree. But what we have coming to WordPress, and if you have been at this conference all weekend, I'm pretty sure you have heard of it, is Gutenberg, the new editing experience, which will eventually turn into the new everything user interface in WordPress. So we have something coming. It's almost ready. It's almost ready. You can work with it now in beta, but there's a lot of stuff is still changing. I think we'll get WordPress 5.0, well, maybe sometime next year if we're lucky. Now, just in case you're not familiar, this is not the Gutenberg you're looking for. If you Google Gutenberg project, you will come up with something that has existed since 1971 and been online pretty much since there was a web, as you can kind of tell looking at their site. But they called it Gutenberg because they're actually reprinting books. Gutenberg was the inventor of the printing press. And Matt Mullenweg says that Gutenberg for WordPress was invented because it was meant to be a revolution in publishing. And I think to a degree that's true. And as you probably know, the concept behind Gutenberg is that you build every post, page, etc., out of blocks. And so then the next question is, well, I know I can build this portfolio in other ways. Can I build it in Gutenberg? And just to keep things simple, I also said, can I build this in Gutenberg with just the core blocks? Because there are already a lot of people creating custom blocks for Gutenberg. I imagine that a lot of the companies that do the ultimate add-on pack for Elementor or Beaver Builder or whoever are going to start doing the ultimate add-on pack for Gutenberg. And they'll have a bunch of blocks. And perhaps eventually there will be some that enough people use that it's going to make sense for a theme developer to put styling for them into a theme. But for now, I figured, let's just stick to the core blocks. Can we build this out of core blocks? Yes, we can. So here is my block portfolio layout test that I just entered into a page here and said, all right, well, let's see, what do we need here? So I'm going to break down all of those bits that we saw in the HubSpot template by how I created them in the Gutenberg editor. So what you see here is the title, which is still the same title field. You could, if you wanted to, create when you register your post type, tell it that it doesn't say that it doesn't support the normal title and put a heading into your content, but I would recommend against doing that. So you have a heading for your executive summary, a paragraph for the actual description of here's what I did. Right, that's what this looks like when you're actually working with it. You can select your heading levels. I was very pleased to see they start with H2 because there should only ever be one H1 on your page. And you can customize the font size and the font color and the background color on paragraphs. In this case, I made the font a little bigger than the default so that it would help get people's attention. Now we have some nested blocks. So we have a columns block, and inside of the columns block, on the left side we have an image block for the logo, and then we have another heading and paragraph. You cannot yet, at least, tell it how much of the width you want taken up by each column. I imagine that's probably coming. Then we have a quote block for our client testimonial, another heading and paragraph. Here's an image block that we're imagining is, what it was like before. It says, performance report from the New York Times. Trust me, I've never worked for the New York Times, although I think there are some people at this conference who have. But imagine, you've got this terrible site performance problem. Your page is loading in, 9.8 seconds, and your bounce rate is enormous because the page takes so long to load. And so people are not getting to your newspaper website to see your ads and click on them and make the newspaper money, and this is bad. So they hire a consultant, and then you talk about how you helped them with this problem. So I imagine a simple optimization process, compress the images, unload the extra scripts, use a CDN, implement caching. I mean, these are all very basic, but this is as an example. And you might want to include some screenshots or diagrams here. Here's an imaginary, graphic illustrating the process. We did this and then this and then this, our workflow. You could also add a video embed, or there are a number of blocks I didn't use in this. The point was not to demonstrate every single block, it was to recreate this particular portfolio layout. And then results and ROI. I figured, well, this is the thing that matters to folks. You want to catch their attention, so I'm going to apply a custom font color as well as a custom font size to this, so that when people are skimming their way down the page, their eyes stop there and they say, oh, this must be important. And then, here's another image, which is, imagine it was too hard for me in the time that I had to actually create a graph that showed, oh, our load time went down, and our click-through rate went up, but all of those things. So imagine this shows that. You're going to be using actual data from your actual clients. And then conclude with a call to action, which is another paragraph. In this case, it's got both a custom font size, a custom font color, and a background color. And then a button. And your button has the option to configure your background color for the button, your text color for the button, and your alignment. So you can basically say align, align left, align center, align right, and then it has a place for the link that the button takes you to. And when we put that all together and display it on the front end of my local test site, it looks like this. You can see it's not perfect. The theme, it was supposedly designed for Gutenberg, but you notice there is no space around that button after the paragraph. So there are things likely that would require some CSS tweaking. But nevertheless, you've got something that looks fairly good out of the box. So now that this is like the scary geeky bit for those who don't code, but hang in there because I will have something to make your life easier at the end. So how do you turn this case study layout, which we've just now manually created in a page, into a block template? And from a development standpoint, it's pretty easy to do, and even better for me is you do it with PHP. Because my JavaScript is really bad. And I suspect that one day we will have the option to just like click a button and say, save this layout as a template. We're not there yet. I'm sure somebody is probably working on a plugin to do that already, because people are working on plugins to do lots of things already. But right now we can't. You do have to do some code. So it goes like this. You have to create your portfolio post type. I created this also with 3 different taxonomies to organize the projects, and I thought, well, the ones I'm most likely to use are project type, which is to say something like, was this a membership site? Was it an e-commerce site? Was it a marketing site? Etc. Client type, which could be your client's industry, because this is something clients look for. Well, who else in my industry has hired you? And project type for any other things that might cross client types and project types, but are things it could be useful for. Now, if you have not coded a custom post type or custom taxonomy before, there's help for you. It's called Generate WP, and they have these generators for post types and taxonomies and queries and a bunch of other things, and you need to fill in some information and then it will generate the correct code for you. And what you need to do after you get your code for registering your custom post type for your portfolio is add a block template. I know you can't see that. Fortunately, it is in the Gutenberg handbook. But basically what it's telling you is that along with the other arguments that you use when you're registering this post type, they've added, it's like, is this public? What's the label? Do you show it in the REST API? You have to show it in the REST API for it to work with Gutenberg. So that must be set to true. And then template. And then you have a large collection of arrays specifying the blocks that you are including in your template. So, question, well, so how do I know what blocks those are? If you look at the code editor for your Gutenberg post, page, whatever you've built, it will actually show you the names of the blocks. So it says, WP colon heading, WP colon paragraph. Those are the block names. And you will find them at core/heading, core/paragraph in the code. So now, don't actually edit anything in this editor because it will completely break what you've done, but look at it and make a note of all those blocks. And then you write your code. So here's my template, okay? Block, array, core/heading, array, placeholder. There's so many arrays that it's a bit confusing, but it was actually not too hard to do this. And I took all of these things, created that template after a few false starts, saved the post type, And then when you say add new portfolio item, this is what you see. For pages or for posts. But since a portfolio is an ideal example of something that belongs in a custom post type, and since there are also already tools for creating a portfolio post type, I know you can do it with Jetpack. There's a plugin I've used before called Portfolio Post Type. There's the Genesis Portfolio Pro plugin. And in the handbook, I did not have time to put this in today's talk, but in the handbook, it shows you a code example for what you can put into your functions file or another functionality plugin so that you can create a template for a post type that's already been registered by something else. And then you say, oh, well, I want to use the Jetpack portfolio, or I'm already using the Jetpack portfolio, but I'd like to create a template like this because it will save me time in the future. You can put the code in with the blocks. So, the burning question is, so when should we start using this? I don't know if any of you are gamers, but my husband and thousands of people out there are clamoring for this game, Cyberpunk 2077. It's like the reboot of some game that was around in the 80s or the 90s. And, they released a 45-minute gameplay and a trailer movie, and everybody is just salivating. And people are like, well, but when will it be released? Well, we think 2019, but, when it's done. And that's about what's happening with WordPress 5.0. It will be released when it's done. 4.9. 0.99.99999. Unfortunately, the versioning system doesn't actually do that, so I'm not sure what they're gonna handle. But I think if we actually get Gutenberg in core within 2019, we'll be doing fairly well. I want you to all go forth and build amazing portfolios, whether you choose to use Gutenberg for them or not. It is important to have a good portfolio that is aimed at providing the information your prospective clients need. If I'm not scheduled in the last slot, I always go and spend an hour in the happiness bar to answer people's questions. But since that's not possible, here is all my contact info. You can reach me on Twitter, on GitHub, on SpeakerDeck, where the slides are. On my own website, wpfangirl.com. I have not implemented this portfolio in it yet, but it's on the to-do list. At the East Bay WordPress Meetup in Oakland, California, I'm going to be doing a reprise of this on Sunday. And by email at sally@wpfangirl.com. I would love to hear from you, suggestions, questions, and we may have a minute or two for questions.
We do. We have about 5 or 10 minutes for questions. I mean, 5 would be good, and then we could go to the closing remarks. So, any questions about this? This is great, I think.
Yes, Amanda.
Do the columns work correctly on mobile?
I have to actually check that, but they are designed to be responsive.
And can you add classes to things instead?
You can add classes to things. So every block has a space in it that says add CSS class. Yes?
So I'm rebuilding a website that 3 years ago. I went through almost exactly the same process. And about last week I did exactly this. And thank you for validating I'm going the right direction, I think. But I guess my questions are twofold. One, I'm throwing out all my own code to buy those plugins. This is so much easier, and the client can use it because it's much easier for them to configure than when they actually build the portfolio pages. My questions are two. One, I don't wait till 2000. You may be right, 2019. I don't know, but it's just HTML that's in the actual result.
I think you're probably pretty.
Why not just go ahead and ship it? I'm going to try to go ahead and ship it because I figure.
I think it depends a lot on sort of what else you're going to need to have work with it.
This kind of stuff is just HTML.
But yeah, this part is, I mean, some of the issues around implementing Gutenberg are, well, okay, so you know, is your Yoast stuff going to work? Well, now it is. Yoast has gotten to that point. Is it? So if there aren't a lot of other things you're using that show up in the post editor that might be an issue, then I would say, yeah, you can go ahead. You can go ahead and use it. You're going to have to decide on a case-by-case basis for clients whether there are likely to be other issues. And you're going to need to make sure you test to make sure it doesn't break anything. But if it's not breaking anything, you know, that's your decision. I would probably start using it on my site sooner than that if I can find time to build it.
I think it's my second question is, so I got to the same place that you're at least what you've shown here. But I suspect you might have gone to the next level, and that is that the template you're using, when I copied the same kind of block template and customized it for a portfolio, it just is a basic template and doesn't do style. So you can do the style over in you can add CSS classes, and you can put CSS in your post. But it seems like that block template itself, there's got to be more to that. You ought to be able to put in classes in the template itself
I'm not
and customize that template a little bit more.
Right. I think there's more you can. I think there's more you can do that I just need to sit down and say, all right, well, which attributes can you set in PHP and what stuff actually has to be done in JavaScript? Because you can see that if you create these things in JavaScript, you can set some of their attributes, like say, oh, we want the font size on this block to be bigger, that kind of thing. And I just don't know yet whether you can do it in PHP. I hope you can. But
that array is a gold mine for that kind of thing.
Yeah. So I just need to look up the attributes, and you know, I will be iterating on the plugin.
Anybody else have a question? I have a question.
Yes.
Using Genesis Portfolio, so if we made that template, we could put that into our portfolio in Genesis, and it would be another template import.
Right. Well, it wouldn't be like a template you select from a dropdown, but if you add it to a plugin, then when you use that plugin to create a new portfolio entry, the template will be there. As long as you have it will work the same way as it works here. That when you create the new thing, oh, all your blocks will be there, and you can fill your content in.
And then the template will show up in the portfolio posts sections.
Yes, I mean the thing about Gutenberg is that if you've got Gutenberg activated, all that stuff shows up live. You don't have to go through the stuff you do with some of the other solutions where you then have to like write more code to tell it that it will display that, because all this is part of the content, and your content is being displayed anyway.
Very cool.
Okay.
Anybody, you're going to be around for a few minutes?
I will be around for a few minutes.
Yeah.
If anybody else has any questions, and please get in touch anytime.
So thanks, Sallie, for coming up. Thank you so much. All right. There's going to be a few closing remarks, and then we're back to work.